regular spam.
Yeah, spam is not kosher.
You know the alphabet I can get some spam?
No.
Buddy told me.
Yeah.
Spam.
Yeah.
I think it's Stan. It was Stan.
Yeah.
His name was someone Stan.
Really?
And he called it spam.
Really?
All about spam. It's
Oh.
such a funny song.
Yeah, he's a funny guy.
Oh, it's all about spam. Which
I'll take a look. Well, I got a lot of spam. Every day I get spam.
I'm just fed up with the emails like that. You know my most popular reply is
What?
unsubscribe.
Oh.
Unsubscribe.
Yeah.
Unsubscribe. All day.
Yeah.
Works good? Nice, good, clear?
If
I saw a documentary
send
a few days last week, and they were using the Big Brother.
That's big. He has more, yes, forward, rewind, I don't want that. What?
What's the big one?
It's a battery pack.
Yeah.
It wants more power or it's a backup.
Not the
Maybe it's enough.
This is very kosher, Brad.
The battery pack costs a lot of money. It's like $20 a stick like this. I have just a small little,
He paid for
it's
it.
good. I recharge it every 3-5 hours.
So kosher.
Every 5 hours, I put it into the computer.
I use.
What do you call this? What do you use it for?
Stick it into the, what?
What do you use the recording for?
I download it onto the hard drive. Now listen, hard drive has much more, this has about 2
I
gigabytes.
learned on Tuesday night.
Oh, you
I
learned
have
Tanya twice a week.
Only for this sheet you use it? Only for him?
Yeah, this year almost.
No, we were.
Eraser,
Yeah.
no eraser.
Where are you up to with your, what chapter are you up to with your, with the-
Hate in the middle.
Oh, so it's
no,
bizarre.
sorry, Bob.
so it's a chazar for what you're doing
Yeah.
here? Good.
Yeah.
What?
We learned it.
Yeah.
So very much.
Oh, all right. Takes time to sink in.
I don't remember learning this year.
I don't.
Baruch Hashem.
Some air over there.
What?
There's looking some cold air.
I noticed that, so I have
I
to
noticed
combat
you
it with the
You
warmth.
look back.
Feeling okay already?
Almost.
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 It's almost what?
He wasn't feeling so good last week.
He looked all right to me.
Yeah,
It,
that's
they gave the share, but maximum
See?
power.
See?
It's the Koyach of Torah.
That's it. That's the refuah.
So we're ready to learn a Perek Tanya today?
Yes, right?
I want to finish Chas today. Yeah, I would like to complete it. Let's see how that goes. Perek Chas, yeah. Page 24. Good evening, everyone. So we're in the month of Adar. Extra Simcha. Marvin B'Simcha, right? Just before we start Perek Chas, just a short little vart about Adar, which I always thought was a very meaningful idea. We know it says the Mishenichnas Adar Marvin B'Simcha. When Adar enters, we increase our joy. And similarly, the Gemara says in Masechtas Taanis also, the Mishenichnas Av, when Adar enters, Memaitin B'Simcha. We decrease our joy. In fact, the two are together in the Gemara. Just like that, when Av enters, we decrease our joy. So when Adar enters, we increase our joy. So the way most people understand this, although if you look deeply at the words, as we'll see in a moment, it's not really the meaning of the words. Now when Adar enters, okay, it's time to be happy. And when Av enters, so then it's not a time to be happy. But the Gemara doesn't say it doesn't say that when Adar enters we start being happy. And it also doesn't say that when Av enters we're not supposed to be happy. It says we reduce our joy. What is the implication of the words reducing our joy?
You still have to be happy.
That means that we still have to be happy. Meaning the Gemara is telling us something very important about life. And that is that Ivdu is Hashem b'simcha. As Rab Nachman says, mitzvah gedoyel aliyas b'simcha. A yid always has to be b'simcha. There is no time when a yid isn't b'simcha, because simcha is vital for avodas Hashem. In order to be able to serve Hashem, we have to be happy. And I'm not going to let the cat out of the bag before the time. In Perek Chavav, we're going to be talking in chapter 26 We're going to be talking at length about happiness and why it's so important. But for the moment, let's suffice with saying that happiness is the energy, is the gas that keeps us going and keeps us motivated and passionate in serving Hashem. So Yid is always happy. Mishenichnas Adar. So this is the Rebbe. The Rebbe explains this in Medayik. When Adar enters, you have to, pick it up a notch. You got to take it up. It's not enough. The joy, the baseline joy, the regular joy that you have the whole year. Marbin b'simcha. You have to increase in your joy. Mishenichnas Av. When Av enters, b'maitin b'simcha. So this time we have to lower a little the simcha from where it usually is. It's to be a little lower, but the Yid should be without simcha. Chas v'shalom. Even on Av, even on Tisha B'Av. Can't function without simcha. Simcha about being able to serve Hashem, simcha about being a Yid, simcha about being able to do a mitzvah and to learn Torah and to do a favor to someone else, and just a simcha on the fact that we are, that we're a Yid, a neshama beguf, and tachelak, as we learned in Perek Beis, the neshama, that's godliness. So these words about Adar and Av, we usually just localize them. It's about Adar and it's about Av, but in truth, the larger message here is not only about Adar and Av, but it teaches us about the entire year. The fact that we're told to add in joy and Adar teaches us that we're supposed to be happy the whole year. And the fact that we're supposed to minimize our Av, our simcha during Av, teaches us that even during Av, also we have to be b'simcha. Just a little, have to take it down a little, because after all, we are commemorating and ba'avelus and mourning the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash.
That's to be moisiv.
To be moisiv b'simcha. So first of all, we're doing a good job right over here.
That's the baseline.
Avel is not allowed to learn Torah. Kudi Hashem Yisharm B'Sam Chilev, because Torah makes you happy. So first of all, adding in Torah is a good thing. And then
Are there months you're supposed to be at a certain level of simplicity?
He said baseline.
there's a baseline, there's a standard simcha. Then there are times when we go up, whether it's month of Adar, whether it's Yom Tov. So first of all, for example, about Yom Tov, when it talks about being simcha,
And simcha,
there's basar and there's yayin. And there's,
so what about Adar? What do you do every day in Adar?
The chinuch says, "Achri hapulis dem shachas alavavis." They're singing a little, and there's dancing a little, and you have a little music and learning Torah, and thinking happy thoughts. It's an avodah. It's an avodah. This is really has nothing to do with the Tanya that we're studying, but Chassidus is, a big idea in Chassidus is that so much of our focus in our avodah, before Chassidus, without Chassidus, is on ma'ases b'poel, is on what to do. How do I do this properly? How do I do this? And I'm going to be mahader b'mitzvah. I'm going to get the most beautiful esrig, and make sure that my tefillin. And when it comes to those mitzvahs which are dependent upon ma'aseh, or even those mitzvahs that are connected to dibur, we work very hard. And we pay sometimes less attention to those mitzvahs that require avodah pnimis, that require real internal work, whether that's the mitzvah of simcha, the mitzvah of bitachon, avas Yisrael, and avas Hashem. And really Chassidus is about telling you it's very nice to go and to work hard on all the mitzvahs which require your hands and your feet and your mouth. But the Eibishter wants more than your hands and your feet and your mouth. The Eibishter wants your heart and your mind also. And that's a bigger avodah, it's a more difficult avodah, because it's more invasive and it's more intrusive. I can daven and I can eat kosher and I can learn Torah without changing who I am. To be besimcha requires an internal change. It requires me becoming somewhat different, and that's scary. What do you mean? I'm depressed today. I'm not in a good mood. I didn't have a good day at work. I'm not happy. Don't tell me to be happy. You want to tell me to wash before I eat? I'll do that for you, because that doesn't require me to move from where I am right now. And the hardest avodah are those avodas which is not just about doing, but actually moving yourself from one place to another and giving your entirety to Hashem. Not only, like I'm saying, your external faculties. And others, it's not a challenge. How do we become a simcha? It's an avodah, and we discussed a few methods. Again, whether it's learning more Torah, whether it's putting on the music, whether it's having a meet twice a week instead of once a week, whether it's singing a song, whatever it may be, dancing a little. Chassidim aren't scared of dancing, even and trying to be ma'ir the simcha.
They dance every day after every.
And as you go to 770, every night there's dancing.
New thing about
it started 24 years ago. Tafshin and Beis. Can I take a 5-minute break to talk a little over here? So
5 minute break for dancing.
A 5-minute break to talk a little history over here. So 24 years ago it was Tafshin and Beis. So Adar was a double Adar. And Chav Zayin Adar Aleph, the 27th of that Adar, that's when the Rebbe had a stroke, from which he never recovered. And the moment that Adar entered that year, the Rebbe started talking. It was like Himmel de Ka'osius. No one understood what the Rebbe was saying. The Rebbe is saying that there are 60 days of Adar. If you include also... Yeah, but I'm saying also, it's only 29 and 30 really, but if you include the first day of Rosh Chodesh Adar Aleph, which is Lamed Shvat, so then you have 60 days of Adar. And what is the significance of 60? In Yiddishkeit, Bittul B'Shishim, very good. So the Rebbe says that with the Simcha, the 60 days of Simcha of Adar, we can be mevatel, we can nullify all the Dvarim Bilti Ritzuyim, all the bad things. What bad things? What's the Rebbe talking about? What bad things? And there were Chassidim who were wise, who were worried a little. What the Rebbe is trying to do something over here. I mean, there was something similar. Was in the summer of 1973. Summer that was right before the Yom Kippur War. So suddenly the Rebbe started talking again and again about gathering children together, and that they should daven together and learn together. And the Rebbe quoted the pasuk in Tehillim, and it says, "Mipi oilim v'yonkim yisadat ha'oiz." From the mouths of children we get the strength, lahashbis oivim misnakim, to destroy the enemy. So we have to destroy the enemy by gathering the children. The whole summer the Rebbe was talking about it.
What's that supposed to mean?
And then on Yom Kippur,
how do you destroy the enemy by gathering the children?
through the Torah of children and the davening, the Torah and tefillah of children, to make a shol beis rabban, we destroy the enemy. And no one knew what the Rebbe was talking about. And then came the Yom Kippur War. And then came the Yom Kippur War right there. And in the Farbrengen afterwards, the Rebbe actually said that there was the words the Rebbe used were niva v'layada my niba. I didn't know exactly why, but I knew that I had the feeling that we need to get the children, because there's some sort of enemy that needs to be destroyed. And as we all know, the miracles of that war wasn't the same as the 6-day war, and there were many more casualties. But in a way, the threat was much bigger because of the inaction of right. So here also the Rebbe started talking about, and the Rebbe kept on talking about it, 60 days to be simcha, to be besimcha. And they started dancing every night, and the Rebbe gave a positive answer. It's a good thing, keep on going, dance. And then on Chav Zayin Adar, the Chassidim understood what the Rebbe was trying to prevent through simcha, and obviously we didn't get the message. Maybe we didn't do enough simcha to be mevatel and yana bilti ritzuyim. But ever since then, in Adar, in 770, every night there's dancing, and hopefully we'll be mevatel all the in yana bilti ritzuyim. What?
The morning goes after Shachas?
Every morning the shachars will dance for a minute or two. No, but I'm talking about by night after Seder, 9:30 after the Seder finishes, the Bachram dance for an hour or two. Anyways, and Simcha is an Avodah Gedela. Okay, that was completely a tangent, and now let's move on to the Perek. It's a tangent, but it's good to know.
After Ma'ariv tonight?
Sorry?
They'll be dancing after Ma'ariv tonight?
We could dance after Ma'ariv tonight. I'm not running anywhere tonight. So we're holding beginning Perichas.
Yeah, sure.
So Perik Vav and Zayin, we're dedicated to talking about, again, we're in the realm of the negative. We're talking here about Klippa, whether Klippas Noiga, or Shalosh Klippas Satmeis, the Gimel Klippas Satmeis, and the effect of doing an Avera. And we explained the difference between Klippas Noiga is an interaction which is seemingly neutral, an action which is seemingly neutral, or an object that's seemingly neutral. In other words, it's not Kedusha, but it's not Gimel Klippas Satmeis, and that we can elevate through using it out L'Shem Shamayim, as opposed to an action or an object which is Gimel Klippas Satmeis, an action which is Gimel Klippas Satmeis, such as doing an Avera, being Mechal Shabbos, or Mechalos Asuris. We're going to get into that. There is the object that's Gimel Klippas Satmeis. When you eat, there's two issues. Number one, your action is forbidden, and the item is forbidden. And then there are things which, when you Mechal Shabbos, there is no forbidden item over there. When you flip the Shabbos, the light, when someone who flips a light on Shabbos, there's no issue of the object, but the action is forbidden. Action is Gimel Klippas Satmeis. And similarly, many other Averis that can be done where it's not the object, but where it's the action. When a person speaks Lashon Hara, there is no object over here, there's the action. And actually, so when a person does an action which is Gimel Klibas Hatmeis, so then the chayis, the energy of that action, is pulled down into Gimel Klibas Hatmeis, and it remains there forever, or at least until a person does Teshuvah Me'ava. That's what we're holding right now. And now the Alter Rebbe is going to tell us that there is something unique about eating treif, more than any other Isser that there is. Until now we talked about all Averis, and now we're going to say, the first words of the Alter Rebbe are, there's something uniquely awful about eating a food which isn't kosher, which this doesn't exist by any other Isser. And what would that be?
Goes into the neshama.
Sorry?
Basically goes into the neshama.
It goes into the neshama, it goes into the guf, and it becomes part. And why is that? Because it becomes part of who you are. When a person goes and flips a light on Shabbos, the action was aser. Over here, you're actually ingesting something which is gimel klipis hatmeis, and it is becoming part of you. It is becoming dam ubasar kibsare. It's becoming part of your flesh and blood. Klipa is becoming part of your physical and spiritual constitution. Gimel klipis hatmeis. Yes.
But if one's a chola, then this concept doesn't apply.
Correct.
So it depends. It's subjective. It's not. It depends. It's not always.
I know. You're asking a very good question. You're saying that if someone is ill, when not only is he permitted to eat treif, but then at that point it's a mitzvah to eat treif. So the answer, and so what is the technique and how does it work? And the answer, it's very complicated, and I think I mentioned in a previous year. Sorry? Baal Tanya doesn't discuss it, no, but it's discussed later on. The Rebbe discusses it on several occasions. There's a lashon from the Alter Rebbe someplace where nasa heter, at that point it becomes mutter. Somehow or other, the klipa becomes softened, and that itself, it loses its status momentarily as gimel klipas hatmeis.
But if someone else ate it, would be aser.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. It's an interesting situation. Right.
How does it affect you if it becomes part of you?
So because it's spiritually damaged food, so it spiritually damages you. Let's do inside. Let's do inside, and we'll come back to this. There's something else to be said about food which isn't kosher. And this is why the food is called aser. Not only the action, the food is aser. Because what if someone ate something treif without knowledge that it was treif? Didn't know it was treif. You know, there are levels. There's shoygig, and then loy hoida is even a lower level. Shoygig means I did something by mistake, but I should have been more careful. Negligent. We're not talking here about negligence. Loy hoida. I had no way of knowing. I had no knowledge. There was no negligence involved. But the person ate treif. So was a iser done over here? Was a iser done? No. There was no avera that was done. You can't say an avera. An avera requires intention. It requires premeditation. There was no premeditation. There was no intention. There was no avera. Moreover, the person ate this food l'shem shamayim. Laveid Hashem b'koyach ha'achilahi. When the person ate it, thinking that it's kosher food, the person ate it l'shem shamayim, and his intention was to serve the Eibishter with the strength that he gained from that eating that food. That's number one. Vigam po'al v'asachen. And not only that was his intention while he ate it, but that's actually what transpired. That's what the person did. Vikara, and he learned v'spalol, and he davened b'koyach achilahi, with the power, with the energy that he received from that food. Still, ein hachayish ba'olam mislabeshes b'teves ha'torah v'tfilah. The energy in that food does not become elevated through the words of davening and the learning Kamaya Hatter, as would be the case if this was mutter. It is tied down in the hands of Sitra Achra. Mishalos Klippus Hatmeis. There was Avera wasn't. That's the crazy thing here. The person did nothing wrong.
Loses the benefit of the food.
Person, it's not losing the benefit. This body was negatively impacted by it.
He has no chiyuv, so
it
no
happened on
energy
its own.
from it.
The energy, Gimel Klip Satameis, was not elevated, so it becomes part of him. And this is again not his fault, but that's what happened. That's what happened. As opposed to any other Avera. If a person turns on, a person is going and turns on a light switch by mistake, there's no Gimel Klip Satameis involved. Why? Because Gimel Klip Satameis is involved because the act was usher. The act, well, you can't say that the act was usher, that was an Avera, if there was no intention over there. Vafilu isur derabanan, even if the food is only usher derabanan. Let's say it's bishul lakum, for example. Same thing. Shechamurim divrei seifrim yesir divrei Torah, because the words of the Chachamim are more stringent than the words of Torah. And therefore, something which is asr, a food which is asr derabanan, is also Gimel Klippas Satameis. So this is something which is unique.
What's his makar of this claim? Does he have a makar for this assumption that by food it's more covered by Gimel Atnei?
So I'm not sure if the Alter Rebbe has a makar in Kabbalah. First of all, the Alter Rebbe to me is a makar, just to be clear on that.
Of course.
But the Rebbe points out something interesting. The Rebbe points out that there's a Gemara in Mesachtes Gittin, Dav Zayin Amud Aleph. The Gemara says something interesting. The Gemara says, "La'olam al yatel adam ema yisera al beisai." A person should not be very heavy-handed in their house. Shouldn't be. Today this is something which is more commonly accepted. In the old times, it's more accepted that the man of the house was the man of the house, and everyone feared him. The Gemara says it's not a good way to run a household. You shouldn't the people fear you. And the Gemara says because there was a great person, his name was Rabbi Gehinnom ben Gamliel, that because he imposed his authority and his fear on his home, so he was given to eat something that was treif. And what is it? Ever menachai. So Rashi explains that what happened was that they shechted an animal, and one of the limbs got lost. I don't know, one of the foot or whatever. And the servants, they were so scared of how he would react, so they cut off the limb of a living animal and they gave it to him to eat, because they were scared to admit to him that they lost that cut of meat. So the Gemara says, is that possible? Is it possible that such a great person should have eaten treif? We know that afilu behemtan shal tzadikim, even the animals of tzadikim don't eat something which are not allowed to eat. There's the famous story about the donkey of Rav Pinchas ben Yair, that even though that it was given to eat food which wasn't, the truma wasn't taken, he refused to eat it. So if the behemoth of a tzaddik is not going to eat something which is treif, a tzaddik himself is going to eat something that's treif? So the Gemara says, no, he didn't actually eat it, but they gave it to him. He almost ate it. So there was almost, it almost happened. So that itself should be enough of a deterrent to realize the negative consequences that can happen. I guess he was a big tzaddik, so he was protected against it. But if one of us were to act that way and someone would feed it to us, then we wouldn't be stopped from eating it. And there are several such stories, also by Chassidish Rebbes.
How does that story show this?
We're getting there.
That's, all right.
Give him a chance.
The Heilige Reb Nachum of Chernobyl. So it said they once put in front of him a plate of a dairy dish. And everyone's eating it and he isn't eating. So they asked him, why aren't you eating? He said, what are you talking about? Where's the food? So he says, what do you mean? Look right in front of you. Food's there. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't see any food. So they said, this must be something funny over here. So they went and they found out by mistake that it wasn't Chalav Yisrael. So the Mishnah regarding Chalav Yisrael says, Chalav shechol ve'akum, milk that was milked by a goy ve'en Yisrael re'eyu, and a Yid doesn't see it. In other words, the Yid is not watching. So the Chassidim, they said, Chalav shechol ve'akum, that milk which was milked by a goy ve'en Yisrael re'eyu, a Yid doesn't see it. Reb Nachum of Chernobyl, he didn't see it because Chalav Akum, so he didn't see it. He was guarded against the possibility of eating it. Akapanim, so Taisus on this Gemara, Mesachtes Gittin, this I don't understand. Taisus brings proofs from several different places in the Gemara where there were tzaddikim, Tanoim and Amoraim, that they made mistakes. They did Averis B'Shogig. So how does that work? That we're saying over here that hashta afilu hetlan shel tzaddikim, that even the behemoth of a tzaddik won't do an avera. So how can he? Maybe he did an avera by mistake, like the other averas. So Tosfos says something interesting. He says that this is the words of Tosfos, that eating something which is treif is more meguna. It's more repulsive. It's more what's a better translation for meguna? Shameful than any other avera. But it doesn't really explain why that is. And then Tosfos continues, very interesting. It says, it brings Pesachim and Ari Pesachim. It talks about that there was an Amira who made a mistake. He forgot, and he ate before Havdalah. So here, this is something which is food related. Tosfos says, no, that also, as long as the food was mutter, so the fact that he ate it during a time when he wasn't allowed to, it's not so meguna. What does this mean? What do you mean? Why is treif more meguna than any other avera? By Yidden we have a hierarchy. Certain averas, what? Chazer is awful. We have a hierarchy, somewhat of an arbitrary hierarchy. Certain averas are higher up on the pyramid than others. There's an older chassid who lives in Crown Heights, if I bring, so he says in a joking way, he says, we know it says that minig mevatel din, that a minig overrides and supersedes a din, a halacha. He says, what's the proof for it? He says, because according to halacha, the din is that when you borrow money from someone, you have to pay him back. But the minig is not that way. Certain averas are more important, certain averas are less. But that's arbitrary. That for some society, for some reason, ascribes more importance to some things than others. But what does it mean that this is more meguna? So the Rebbe says that based on this Tanya, we understand what it means. That eating food is much worse than that, because eating food is worse than any other avera. Because even if another avera, if you do it by mistake, it's merely an avera. But eating food, the impact remains. The impact remains. So therefore, the Eibishter, the pasuk says, "Liyuna l'tzadik alav," and the Eibishter won't allow for a tzaddik to trip and fall. Tosfos says that pasuk is only about food, and based on this Tanya, we understand it. So I don't know if you could say that Tosfos and Gittin is a mucker, but it's definitely.
Well, it's certainly one flows into the other.
Correct.
It certainly,
right.
Brings out a notion of what we're driving at.
Right. There's an interesting story actually about the Alter Rebbe. And by the way, this is why, before we get to the story, by Chassidim, always, food, utmost importance. Very careful about food, making sure that everything that we eat is exactly kosher, and even for the kids, to make sure that it's the highest standard of kashrus, and Chalav Yisrael, and all the Hidurim, because, and you say, why food, and why not everything else? The famous story, I think, with Talmidim of the Chayza, someone says, you're very careful about what goes into your mouth, you're not careful about what goes out of your mouth. You're familiar with the story? They were saying Lashon Hara. And but the truth is, there is something unique about what goes into your mouth. That is the truth. Because it becomes part of who you are. You are what you eat. That's Zakman. And it's true spiritually also. And Chassidim always had a very special place in their heart to make sure that double checking and triple checking to make sure that everything in kashrus is top standard, because everything else, if I did it by mistake, it's not a big deal. I wasn't intending. But in kosher, it's not about whether I was intending or not, or whether it was an avera. It's did I ingest gimel klippus atmeis? And especially when it comes to emunah. So there are a lot of times, I know the Rebbe, when people would say they have issues in Sfeikis B'Emunah, the Rebbe would talk about making sure you're eating only kosher and Chalav Yisrael and all these things, because when a person ingests Gimel Klip Sat Meis, that can have an impact on a person's Emunah. There's a story that Rabbi Kiva Eger, he once came to visit the town of Lamja. And this was, the Rabbi Kiva Eger passed away probably around the 1830s, maybe around 1840. The Alter Rebbe passed away in the year 1812. So this was after the Alter Rebbe passed away. And he came to the town, and obviously Rabbi Kiva Eger is such a great gadol. A lot of people are coming to visit him. And in comes a woman, and she's crying to Rabbi Kiva Eger. She has several children. I think the story is she had 7 children. And the youngest one is a very bright boy. But for some reason, Gemara just doesn't enter the head. The secular studies, you're familiar with the story?
The chicken?
Yeah. The secular studies everything's going well and everything. He's a bright boy. He's a sharp boy. Why is it that the Gemara isn't going well? Can't learn Gemara. So Rabbi Akiva Eiger said it must be that your son ate something which isn't kosher, and they were shocked. From my parents, it wasn't like today. Today you say, well, something kosher. So what am I going to do? I can go check my pantry and go check every single supermarket that I ever bought from and every restaurant I ever ate in, and the amount of food that we enjoy. It's almost impossible. If someone tells you ate something today, where are you gonna start looking? In the olden times, it was very different. Everything was homemade. You bought the eggs and the meat from the eggs, not the meat. You bought a chicken. You bought it to the sheikhet. Everything was made in the home. There was no supermarket where you bought something which had 95 different ingredients. One of which was made in Taiwan, which might have had a questionable substance in it or something. And they were shocked. So they were going to check how it happened, but they also asked, so what do we do now? He said he has to really, really work hard, and if he works hard, Yigia B'Torah, he'll break through. He'll break through and he'll be able to learn Gemara also. So this lady went home, and she was determined to find out where's this. So she went and spoke to her son. Her son was around 13, 14 years old. And she says, tell me, did you ever eat anything not in this house? He says, no. She said, think, you had to have eaten something. He thinks, but many years ago it was Hanukkah, second night of Hanukkah. And we were dismissed early from school because it was Hanukkah. And on the way home, by the inn, on that street, there was a chasna going on. They invited us in, and I had some soup. Okay, I have to go investigate. The problem was, the innkeeper was from a Yid, so also it still didn't answer the question completely. So they went to the inn, and they asked the innkeeper, do you remember, was there a chasna over here in that day? So he went and checked it up. Yeah, it was in the year 1805, in the second night of Hanukkah. There was a chasna here. The name of the guy was Yekusiel Alpert. It was the second marriage. Now, the parents knew Yekusiel Alpert. Hitaka he wasn't from the finer Yidden in town, put it that way. He had an unsavory reputation. But that didn't really answer the question, because he wasn't the one who made the food. The food was made in the inn, and there was the shoichet, and everyone is still Yiras Shamayim. So they went to the shoichet. The parents of this boy went to the shoichet, and they said, the shoichet said, how can I help you? He says, we have a question for you. If you remember, this pertains to the chasna of this Yekusiel Alpert. And when the shoichet heard this, he turned white. And he says, I can't believe it. That's still coming back to haunt me, that wedding. It's like you're raking coals on my back. He says, what happened? He says, everything was fine for the wedding, and I shechted it, and everything was 100% kosher, and the wedding went well. A few days later, I'm walking in the streets, and I'm approached by a Chabad Chassid. And the Chabad Chassid tells me, who would believe that a shoichet, a Yiras Shamayim like you, would sell his soul for some money? I said, what are you talking about? He says, what, you don't know about this letter? You don't know about the letter from the Alter Rebbe about Yekusiel Alpert? I said, I don't know what you're talking about. So he says, one second, I'll get it for you. Went home, comes back with a letter. This Yekusiel Alpert was, as mentioned, he was married once before. And the divorce that he gave his wife was a questionable divorce. And the Alter Rebbe paskined, and he wrote a letter that the divorce is invalid. And therefore he said that he absolutely cannot get married again until he divorces his first wife again in a kosher way. And he said, and I'm making a gezerah therefore, that if chas v'shalom he does get married again without divorcing his wife, then all any animal or fowl that's shechted for this chasana is treif. And he said, the Sheikh said, when I heard that, my heart fell in me. I had no idea. I've done shuvah for that, and I fasted for that. I had no idea. And the story quickly spread in the town of Lamja, and everyone was talking about both the greatness of Rabbi Akiva Eiger, that he was able to identify the source of the issue, and also the koyach of the Alter Rebbe to be able to render something treif and the impact that it should have. So, but again, and this is all about food.
It's the case of Lohoda.
Lohoda, absolutely.
So the Baal Tanya is, of course, consistent. I mean, he's consistent to the. I mean, it's like a mirror image, the story and what we just read in the Baal Tanya.
Yeah, and what's interesting is like this. For those of you who are coming for a while, 'cause we're holding on Perek Ches, but maybe some of you remember. In Perek Dalid of Tanya, the Alter Rebbe talks about the levushim of Machshava Diber Maisa. In other words, remember Perek Gimel, we spoke about the Chabad and Das and the Midas. And then in Perek Dalid we spoke about the levushim. What are the levushim? The levushim are what connect us to Hashem. Through Torah and mitzvahs. And then in Perek Hey, the Alter Rebbe continues, and the Alter Rebbe says that even though Torah and mitzvahs, both of them connect us to Hashem, but there is a value that Torah has that mitzvahs doesn't. Anyone recalls this? There's an advantage that Torah has that mitzvahs does not have.
Hashem is in the Torah.
That Hashem is not in the mitzvahs. And what is the answer? If you remember, the Alter Rebbe says, and he ends off the Perek by saying, the difference between Torah and mitzvahs is that Torah is mazon, Torah is the food. And mitzvahs are like the levushim. When we learn Torah, we're ingesting Hashem. It becomes part of us. When we learn Torah, when we understand Torah, it becomes part of us. It becomes part of the way we perceive things and we understand things. So it's fascinating that we have the exact same thing in the opposite way. Zalu Maza. Just like the Alter Rebbe talks about Torah and mitzvahs in general, and talks about how both of them connect us to Hashem in such a powerful way. Anytime we do a mitzvah, or anytime we study Torah, and then the Alter Rebbe says, however, there's a different category. And that is Torah, because Torah is food. Torah we ingest, and something which we ingest has so much of a greater impact on us than something that we just do. A mitzvah we do, Torah we absorb. And now the Alter Rebbe is saying the exact same thing in the opposite way. Anytime a person does an Aveira, the act at that moment distances and causes the disconnect from Hashem. But in Aveiras, there's another league. The Lu'umaza, the opposite, the counterpart for Torah, and that is Treifa food. Because that's not something just that we do, but it's something that we ingest, which is why we have to be so much more careful about the foods that we eat. So what we've established until to this point is that and this is a fundamental idea, that when it comes especially to food, it's not pshat. This food Hashem says I could eat, and this food Hashem says I can't eat. It's actually it's about the food. It's not about me. It's not as if pig and cow is the same thing, but Hashem said this eat and this don't eat. There's actually a substantive spiritual difference, that the spiritual DNA of something which is treif is different than the DNA of something which is kosher. And therefore, says the Alter Rebbe, V'lachein, 2 lines from the bottom of page 24, V'lachein, and therefore, Gam, also, Hayetzer hara av'koyach ha'mis'avel, dvarim asurim, the Yetzer hara, and the craving, the craving that we have for things that are forbidden, for treifa foods, who shade mishadin luchroin. These are words from the Zohar. Is a goyish Yetzer hara. In other words, a yiddish Yetzer hara, because our nefesh b'hametz, because our Yetzer hara is klipas noiga, so therefore naturally it only craves something which is klipas noiga. It wouldn't crave. A yid doesn't naturally crave something that is aser. The craving for something aser is a goyish Yetzer hara. Shua Yetzer hara shel umas ha'olam. This is the Yetzer hara of the goyim, shenafshisayim, for their souls derives mishalosh klipas hatmeis. Mashenken a Yetzer hara v'koyach ha'mesavel dvarim ha'mutarim, as opposed to the Yetzer hara and the craving for things that are mutter, l'malas tavasei, when a person just wants to fulfill his taivas, right? Who shade mishadin Yehudayin. That's a Jewish demon. That's a Jewish Yetzer hara. Why? Because ultimately, kosher food, even if eaten improperly with improper intentions, it can still eventually be restored to kedusha, kedula'el, as we learned in last perek. So the obvious question is, if a Yiddish Yetzer hara can't crave something which is gimel klipas hatmeis, then how is it that we see that there are many Yidden who do crave things that are aser? How does that work? So it's explained that that's the natural state. But when a person eats or enjoys Olam Haza in a gluttonous way, which, as we discussed on last period, at that time, we take the kosher food and we lower it down, at least temporarily, to Gimel Klippus Atmeis. That creates within us the Shed Meshed and Nuchrain, the Goyshe Yetzer Hara, the Gimel Klippus Atmeis Yetzer Hara, something which you don't even naturally have. But it's something which we created within ourselves. We created that desire. We say in the Al Chetet, one of the Chetes we say is Al Chet Shechatanu Lofanecha B'Yetzer Hara. Really, every Avera is through the Yetzer Hara. But perhaps the meaning is Al Chet Shechatanu Lofanecha B'Yetzer Hara, by creating a Yetzer Hara for things which we didn't even, creating a desire for things which we don't even naturally have a desire for, because by entertaining and being so farzunkin and pulled down into things that are mutter, but they're not appropriate, that cause that's the appetizer, and that whets our appetite for things that are forbidden, even though naturally we wouldn't have a desire for them. So the problem is, however, that by now we might be thinking like this: something that's treif is awful, horrible, and terrible. It's Gimel Klippus Hatmeis. It always remains in the hands of the klippas unless I do a tshuva me'ava. Something which is mutter, something, however, which is kosher, is good. So if I eat it l'shem shamayim, so then I bring it up to kedusha right away. And if I don't eat it l'shem shamayim, if I eat it just tamazoi, or if I eat it for gluttonous reasons, I eat it for bad reasons. Okay, so a day later, 3 days later, 5 days later, I can, as Dr. Rebbe said in the last Perek, I can bring it back up to kedusha. So is eating l'shem shamayim really so important? Why not? I mean, why? Yeah, why is it so important? I'll enjoy my steak tonight, like a fresser, and 5 days from now, I'll return to my life of Avodas Hashem, and automatically I pull it back up. It's not so simple. I mean, it is so simple that is the mechanism. That 5 days later I pull it back up, but there's a problem, and that's what we're going to do inside now. 4 lines from the top of page Yud Gimel. However, Mekal Mokim still Koidim Shechazar LeKedusha. When you eat something which is kosher, but you lowered it down to klipa because you didn't eat it l'shem shamayim, even though it's only temporary, but before Koidim Shechazar LeKedusha, before you bring it back up to kedusha, Hu Sitra Achra VeKlipa, it's klipa, which means that you temporarily hosted klipa within you, and again you ingested it. It became part of you. And therefore, even afterwards, even after you do tshuva, in other words, even after you return to the way of serving Hashem, an impression remains, a residue remains. Because from every food or drink, as soon as you eat it, it becomes part of you. Becomes part of your flesh and blood. So therefore, when we eat a food, even if it's a kosher food, and we eat it not l'shem shamayim, so therefore the residue of that klipa remains even after the person does tshuva and returns to Hashem. That residue remains. Again, we're not talking about treifa foods. And treifa foods, we're not talking about residues. We're talking about the food itself remains in klipa. But here we're talking about kosher food. And therefore, the body needs to have chibut hakever. I'll explain what that is in a moment. To cleanse it and to purify it. From the tuma that it absorbed when it had hana from this world and its pleasures. Mitumas klipas noiga. It was taka the tuma of klipas noiga. It's kosher food. The shade and yudain. It's a kosher Yetzer Hara. What is chibut hakever? So chibut hakever literally means to knock what?
They hit you.
They knock the kaver. Obviously, it's not physical; it's spiritual. It's the guf, but it's something spiritual we're talking about over here. And just like when you have a carpet, and if it gets if dust attaches to it, so you have to knock it to clean it off. So the same thing also, somehow or other, in some sort of spiritual way, the body has to undergo this process, which is a painful process for it. But as we know that by the Eibishter, all the punishments are all chesed. Everything is chesed. Gehinnom is also chesed. You know, the Gemara says in Masechtas Chagiga, the Gemara says that there was, I'm sure you all heard of Elisha ben Avuya, who was a very, very great Talmud Chacham and a very great Tana, who eventually he became a heretic. He became a kofer and did many averos and did many awful things. So, and he died. And he had a Talmud. His Talmud was Rameir. And Rameir remained connected to him throughout, in a very touching and moving way, although all the other Chachamim distanced themselves from Elisha ben Avuya, and the other Chachamim couldn't really understand why Rameir was maintaining connection with someone who was a Rasha. Let's be straightforward, or a terrible Rasha. But Rameir maintained this connection. Now Rameir died probably around many years later, many decades after Acher, but before Rameir passed away, so Rameir said, so I'm sorry, I'm missing a part of the story. The Gemara says that when Acher passed away and he went up to Bezdin Shalmaila, so Bezdin Shalmaila said, what are we going to do with him? We can't let him into Gan Eden, obviously, because of who he is. We can't let him into Gehinnom because he learned too much Torah. Imagine that. So his neshama remained in limbo. And before Rameir passed away, so Rameir said that when I pass away, I'm going to go to Gan Eden, to the heavenly courts, and I am going to daven that they should let him into Gehinnom. Can you imagine that? I'm going to get him into hell. And that was as a favor. Because he says, Mutav diledaine, better that he should be judged, v'leisei la'alma da'asi, so he should be able to enter into Olam Haba. And he says, if you want to see that what I'm saying is true, you'll see that as soon as I die, the mayor says, smoke will start coming up from the cave of Acher. And that's not what happened. The mayor died, and smoke, for around 100 years, smoke was coming up from the cave of Acher. And then Rabbi Yochanan, before Rabbi Yochanan passed away, Rabbi Yochanan said, is it a trick for a student to roast his teacher? As Rameir says, when I die, I'm going to daven that they should take him out of Gehinnom and already put him to Gan Eden. And you'll see when I die, the smoke is going to stop. And that's not what happened. Rabbi Yochanan died, and the smoke stopped coming up from Acher's kever. Now, it's an interesting story, but the most telling part about it is that Gehinnom isn't the ultimate punishment. Not going to Gehinnom is the ultimate punishment. And that's why Rameir davened, because what is Gehinnom? And this is where Yiddishkeit is so different than all the other religions. Gehinnom is not an eternal punishment, and Gehinnom is not about exacting vengeance. Gehinnom is where the neshama gets rehabilitated and gets washed off in order that it should be able to enter into Gan Eden. So Gehinnom also is part of the chesed of Hashem, so that ultimately the neshama, after having been cleansed of its averos, can be able to experience the ziv hashchina and the pleasures and the delight of Gan Eden, because everything of Hashem is chesed. Now Gehinnom is much more severe than Chibut HaKever, though. Using the example we gave earlier, sometimes you have a carpet and there's some dust attached to it, so you have to take a club and you have to beat it. And sometimes the carpet is stained, and sometimes the stain is deep seated, and for that you need a real thorough cleaning, and that's Gehinnom. That's Gehinnom. So what he's saying over here, for the person who ate kosher foods, but the only problem is that it wasn't eaten l'shem shamayim, and therefore the residue of the klipa remains. For that, it's like the dust that's on the carpet, and for that, chibut hakever cleans it off. Whatever that spiritual process is of getting rid of that residue which got stuck on to the neshama. Inside, Elohim Kain, unless Mishalei Nehana Me'elam Haza Kol Yamav Kerabeinu HaKadosh. Unless someone who didn't have any hana from Elam Haza his entire life, like Rabbeinu HaKadosh. The Gemara says in Masechtas Ksubis, in the last Perek, that Rabbi, before Rabbeinu HaKadosh, Rabbi, he's the author, the editor of the Mishnah, that before he passed away, he lifted up his 10 fingers, and he said, Rabbeinu Shalom. He says, Gali v'yadu alafanacha, it's revealed, and it's revealed to you, that Yogaiti b'Torah, that I geharvit in Torah, I toiled in Torah with all my 10 fingers. And I didn't have hana from this world, even be'etzba ktana, even with my small finger. Which is amazing, considering the context, considering that Rebbe was one of the wealthiest people that ever lived. His wealth was phenomenal. His wealth rivaled that of of Antoninus, who was the Roman emperor of the time. And the Gemara talks about the lavish meals that he had in his home. The Roman dignitaries and aristocrats of the time was considered for them to be an honor to be invited to the palace of Rabbi Yehuda Anasi in Beis Shemesh, to be able to invite it for a meal. So he had tremendous opulence and the way it's interesting the way it's described in Rashi, that there was always radish and lettuce on his table, which today that's a big deal. Anyone can have radish and lettuce. But in the olden times, that means you had to have greenhouses, because that's a seasonal item. They couldn't fly them in from Cancun. So that was a tremendous wealth. And still, despite his tremendous wealth, and it's not just that he had money, but he didn't use it. He had the banquets and the feasts and everything. He said, I didn't eat even one drop.
How's that possible?
It was all Hashem Shamayim.
He ate everything.
Historically speaking, he was in a little window of time. There was persecution beforehand, there's persecution afterwards, and Rabbi had a very important mission to accomplish. That was to the Mishnah, which was revolutionary, and there was a watershed moment in Jewish history. And the way he was able to accomplish it was because he lived in such a royal manner, and therefore he had such incredible relationships and respect from the Roman dignitaries, that he was able to get the Mishnah through. So everything that he did was for that goal of Hashem Shemaim, of preserving Torah, and the fact that we have today Mishnah, Gemara, and everything was because of Rabbi's banquets. So it was all Hashem Shemaim 100%. So someone like Rabbi, who never had Hana from Elam Haza, even one bit, so such a person is not subjected to Chibut HaKever, but otherwise a person who has Hana from Elam Haza is subjected to Chibut HaKever. I should point out though, that, actually we'll get this a little later. So from one fun topic to another fun topic, we're going to move from Chibut HaKever to Kaf HaKela. How about someone who speaks Dvarim B'Telem? How do you translate Dvarim B'Telem?
Casual talk.
Casual talk. Meaningless talk. Idle talk. Very good. Idle talk. Beheter, let's say it was mutter. What should be a problem with Dvarim B'Telem? The problem with Dvarim B'Telem is that it says in the Torah, V'dibarta bam, you're supposed to speak in B'divrei Torah, V'lei B'Dvarim B'Telem. So how is it possible that it should be Dvarim B'Telem Beheter? So the Rebbe says, Kegoin, for example, Am Ha'aretz, an ignorant person, She'eni Yachal Lilmaid, he doesn't know how to learn, so he's not mechuyev to learn Torah all day and all night, he can't. So for him, Dvarim B'Telem is Beheter. So still, tzarech l'tayir nafshi mituma zu de klipa zu. Still, there's a klipa associated with Dvarim B'Telem, and as we go through the Perek, we'll figure out why that is. And the purification of this is Aidei Gilgula B'Kaf HaKela K'meshikasav B'Zoyer Parshas B'Shalach Daf Nun Tes, through it being subjected to the slingshot, as explained in Zoyar. That it's actually based on a pasuk in Shmuel Aleph, where it uses the words Kaf HaKela. That there's this punishment of the neshama where it's described in the Gemara Masechta Shabbos that there's two angels, one standing on this side of the world and the other standing on the other side of the world, and they slingshot the neshama from one side to the next. And that's a very painful process. Now obviously that's an anthropomorphic description, and that's not really what happens, but it's explained in the Sfarim that what that means is that when the neshama goes up Lamaila and it experiences over there the incredible delights that are available in the spiritual world and all the beautiful things in the spiritual closeness, and then it is taken, the neshama, and it is thrown back into the Dvarim B'Telem that it spoke over here in this world. And that is so painful for the neshama. When it sees the truth, and it's right over there, it sees the Eibishter, and suddenly it's back into what?
It's a shock.
It's a shock, but it's so painful for the neshama. This is what I was doing. This I was wasting my time. So it's the contrast. It's like, the hot water into the cold water, the hot water into the cold water. Right. So therefore, that's why you're saying that's why you're not allowed to fast on Friday. That's what you're talking about, that halacha.
I didn't have that in mind. I just had in mind the contrast between when you go from Shabbos back to Chomo to Shabbos. There is a contrast.
It's true, but also there's a halacha that you're not allowed to fast on Friday, because that contrast isn't, you're supposed to eat on Friday.
But what did he do wrong over here?
It's a good question.
It's not done.
And what did the person who
Again, he's not
what did the
bothered.
person
What do you want him to be?
what did the
And
person
he's
who ate treif by mistake? What did he do wrong?
Yeah, but there you say there's a physical.
So we're going to figure that out. Okay. There's something. Obviously, something happened over here. The question is what?
That's the chepser.
We're going to find out now that there's some spiritual things that we ingest also. That's what we're going to find out now.
All right.
Aval, however, l'diburi masurim. That's only if the dvarim b'teilim was beheter. Aval diburi masurim kigoyin, for example, if for kamoy litzanis. Is litzanis aser? No, anyone can remember anything that we learned up to this point that might.
Milsa
Milsa de bedichasa
is mutter.
is mutter. What's the difference between milsa de bedichasa and litzanis?
You mock
Well, you're
it.
kavanah.
You know, I'm not laughing with you. I'm laughing at you, right?
That's right.
That's milsa de bedichasa and litzanis. Laughing with you is milsa de bedichasa, a joke, and that's klipas neigam, and that if used properly can be ko'iloch, a carbon can be 100% perfect, can be beautiful, right? And that can be ma'al kedusha. Litzanis is not. I'm not laughing with you. Litzanis means mockery. You're laughing at something, and that's aser. That's giving klipas atameis. Right, right. You know, what does the Gemara say? That kat litzanim are one of the three. The group of litzanim are one of the three groups that never. Einim roim pnei hashchina. There we go.
Oh, the man just came.
So yeah.
I just heard a Bosco.
So litzanis. So litzanis is aser. V'lashon hara, ukiyoytze behem, and anything similar to that. In other words, any other dibur which is aser. Ein kafakela levade moyer latayr lahaver tu mosim anefesh. Their kafakela isn't enough. Rak shrichal there the Gehinnom. There the carpet is dirty. That's avera. And avera is not something which is extrinsic. It's not dust that's attaching. This is something which is it's a stain. It requires the serious bleaching and what's a deep clean, right? You know, you go to a car wash and they offer you they're different levels. You can go through that, just go through the wash, or they give you the waxing and the shampooing. That's Gehinnom.
So what does a person do while they're still alive?
Well, I don't understand your question.
How do they, if the neshama is soiled, if they need this, if they did things that only the Gehinnom can deal with?
Tshuva.
So.
But
Tshuva.
He's saying it's reverse, should be reversible.
That what? Through tshuva, yes.
So then tshuva is always the antidote.
Tshuva, yeah, we're talking here obviously if tshuva wasn't done. There's also other Gemaras that talks about how a little Yisurim down here in this world takes away a lot of Gehinnom above. Even little Yisurim. The Gemara says even, you put your hand in your pocket and you wanted to take out a nickel and you took out a dime instead. That takes away some Gehinnom. Yeah. Pain is cleansing. Pain is cleansing.
Well, how come tshuva doesn't help on macholos asudus? Why is that reversible?
Tshuva doesn't help macholos. Tshuva mi'ava probably would help. Tshuva mi'ava. If you felt so bad, tshuva mi'ava. The same thing, someone who has the ability to study Torah. And instead is involved in dvarim b'teilim. So here too, ain't kafakel levadim lenafshi. Kafakel alone is not enough. Lemarka, to cleanse it, lezachacha, to purify it. The specific punishments. This is the Musar Perik in Tanya, by the way. Really, of all the Prakim in Tanya, like Perik Zayin, Perik Ches, this is the Musar Perik. The specific oinshim, punishments, which are given for bittul Torah bepratus milvad, and that's besides einish haklali, the general punishment, l'chol bittul mitzvahs asay, for any time that a person abstains from doing a mitzvah machmas atzlus because he's lazy, begehinnom shal sheleg, in the Gehinnom of ice, kimavur b'machal macher, as explained elsewhere. So we have over here, we have different levels. We have over here, we have Gehinnom, and which that's for the real Averis, and for the stuff that get attached on, for that we have Kafakela or Gilgal, or Chibud HaKever is mentioned earlier. Now the question that you asked, why, if the person, what did he do wrong? What's wrong? How is it that you're ingesting it? the Dvar B'Telem. We didn't get to that. We're going to have to answer that next week. But before we finish, I just want to. Do you know there'd be a Hayom Yom over here? If not, I have it on my phone.
But how's it different from Machos Asus? It's comparable to Machos Asus.
In a certain way. We're going to bring it all together next week. We're going to finish the Perek and bring everything together. Interesting. The Alter Rebbe doesn't talk about that, but yeah, what you see with your eyes definitely has.
You can't get rid of those impressions.
That's true. That's true. Interesting. The Alter Rebbe doesn't mention that, but you're right. That would seem to be a good point. So in the Hayom Yom, which is a sefer, which was this actually the first sefer that was published by the Rebbe. It's a collection of writings and sayings from the Frierdiker Rebbe. So Hayom Yom of Zayin Tevis, which. So the Rebbe writes like this: Hashir lihi pater mechibut hakever hu. If a person wants to avoid chibut hakever, so shechelik shlishi maham meslas, a sixth of the day. What is 1/6 of 24 hours? How many? 4 hours. Okay. Yomer eisius ha'Torah tehillim chulu. Person should be saying for a sixth of the day to be saying the words of Torah and tehillim, etc. L'zakis l'zichuch hanefesh. So the person should have the purification of the nefesh li pater mekaf hakelahu, to get rid of kaf hakela. Aydei chazara kol yom, through chazering every day, kamash yesh bicholta, as much as one is able. Mishnayis Tanya tehillim balpeh. So that's what he says.
Who has a
Sorry?
cup for that? How many people have a cup to do Balpeh?
I bet if we knew what Kaf HaKela really was, we'd probably be saying a lot of Mishnayos Tehillim and Tanya Balpeh. Anyways. But
if you knew what that was, you'd make sure you know, huh?
Yeah. Anyways, so that's a Messiah B'Toyev. The more words of Torah we say, the more words of Torah we learn, and if we say it Balpeh, so then, in general, if I could just conclude with one thought, when, by Chassidim, Gan Eden and Gehinnom aren't as big a deal as it is by the rest of the world. We live in the present, we live in the now. And we know that what we're doing over here is much more important than Gan Eden or Gehinnom. By way of example, imagine a person eradicates cancer. No more Yanamach, he found the vaccine. How many hundreds of millions of lives is this person saving? And then, after it's been confirmed, there is no more Yanamach in this world. He's invited, he wins the Nobel Prize in Medicine, he's invited to Sweden. He accepts the prize, he gets $1 million. That's what I think what they pay for the prize. Let me ask you a question. When you ask him later on, says, what's the greatest moment in your life? What's he going to answer? The Nobel Prize. The Nobel Prize is nothing.
The discovery.
The fact that what he did, that he eradicated. The accomplishment. The reward is nothing in comparison to the accomplishment itself.
That's moment.
Schara vera vera. When a person, I find it funny. You find sometimes this is a mother was in a car accident. Kid wasn't in a car seat. Kid got injured very badly. Mother's going to jail for a year. I'm like, mother's going to jail for a year? That's her punishment? That's her punishment? What's the biggest punishment that she got?
The kid got injured.
The kid got injured, right? No punishment can be bigger than that. And a chassid realizes that Gan Eden, Gehinnom, a mitzvah. There's nothing more important than a mitzvah. The fact I'm going to get Gan Eden for that's nice. But a mitzvah is connecting to Hashem. An Avera, disconnecting from Hashem. That's the worst thing. There's nothing worse than an Avera. We're not scared of the Gehinnom, we're scared of the Avera. Nevertheless, at the same time, this whole, when we're talking about Gan Eden and Gehinnom, it does teach us something in terms of the impact. Because when you realize how much the neshama has to be cleaned for this action, what really it's supposed to be telling us, not, I should be scared of chibut hakever kaf hakela. It's not the point to make us scared. The point is to realize, oh my gosh, if that's how my neshama has to be cleansed for doing this, Do I want my neshama to be dirty like that? It's about here, it's about the now, it's about recognizing the impact of our actions. Learning about Gehinnom or Gan Eden should be telling us about what we're doing and how important that sometimes we think, what's make a difference? I eat this, I don't eat it, L'Shem Shemaim, not L'Shem Shemaim, Dvarim B'Telim. When we understand the Gehinnom that comes from it, it's not about being scared of the Gehinnom. It's understanding how consequential and how damaging that action is, and therefore to avoid that behavior and to keep doing the right thing.